Torah Life Ministries come out of the world.
All right, everybody, here we are with Torah Life Ministries, and we have a great guest today, our friend Keith Johnson. Keith, why don't you introduce yourself to the Torah Life crowd and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Well, it's good to be invited by Paul onto this channel. I hope all of you are doing well. My name's Keith Johnson, as he mentioned. I have had a long journey to Torah. Actually, for the first 20 so years of my life, I was a United Methodist pastor until about 2002. And in 2002, I had a radical change in the land of Israel. I encountered God's time, God's Torah, and His name. And as a result of that, everything has changed. My ministry, my life, my family. And now what I'm doing is I'm going out wherever I'm invited to share information about God's time, His Torah, and His name, the Tetragrammaton, which we have been able to uncover in the oldest, most complete vocalized Hebrew manuscripts. So I actually have here a couple of the books. The book, His Hallowed Name Revealed Again, which I wrote in the back. There's a CD, 80 different names and descriptions found, His name with descriptions, and then also a television series, His Hallowed Name. But basically now what I'm doing is I'm trying to gather people that are serious about the things of Torah, as my friend Paul is doing, and trying to find people that are saying they're willing to stand up even against the ban that's presently in place by the traditionalists that tell us we should stay away from truth and just stay in tradition. So hishallowedname.com, there's a section actually called the Ambassador's Embassy, and that's where I get people to come from around the world that are willing to stand up, take the information, the inspiration, the revelation, and go out and share it with the world. So if you're interested, go to hishallowedname.com, to the Ambassador's Embassy section. All free stuff, information you can get. That's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Well, something that I heard your lecture and something that really resonated with me and what we teach here in Torah Life Ministries, you spoke about how 10 years after you started to learn all this stuff, how you were raising your family one way,
yeah,
and then you started to say, I got to do it different.
Yes.
And I wish I would have known this that long ago, but I'm not going to wait. That's beside the point. I'm doing it now. So talk about the difference in that, the family, the relationships, the roles, and how these things have changed.
Well, it's interesting because as a result of really understanding Torah and its language, history, and context, you realize that it's not just about the spiritual issues, it's also about the physical issues. So I've taken the approach that with my family, that we want to be healthy physically. We eat food that is according to the biblical understanding of what's best for our bodies. Also in terms of how I relate to my family, my wife and my sons, I took the approach that says I'm going to look at the scripture first, find out what it says, and then apply it in our family's lives. So we've really taken that sort of approach, Paul. It's been a radical change. We look very different to the people that we live around and our family that we've been connected to, but we're a light to the nations with that.
Now, are you a leader of a local assembly?
No, not a leader of a local assembly. I'm still, it's really people always get nervous. They say, well, what's a United Methodist pastor doing following Torah? They haven't kicked me out yet. Maybe they will after this weekend. But I basically have been appointed to the Biblical Foundations Academy, which allows me over these last 10 years to spend the time in getting the information. And now just in the last couple years have I been out sharing. But I don't have a local congregation, but I certainly have been willing to go where I'm invited.
Well, one of the things we teach at Torah Life Ministries is about modesty. Mm-hmm. And has your viewpoint or your heart changed about this topic since you started to get more into Torah and just seeing the way that people dress?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned of the way that we are right now in our society. There's so much nonsense that's going on. We look more like the nations, the pagan nations around us than we do the people of God. I'm not sure if all the issues are regarding that. I just think that anytime we represent the creator of the universe, as I call him, would be Yehovah, according to the Hebrew manuscripts that I've been able to study. But as we represent him, we have an opportunity to represent him in modesty and truth and understanding. And so I'm always looking for ways to best represent him, and I think that's one of the ways we can do it.
Can you please tell us a little about your translations that you've read and how you went from just being a Methodist preacher to now knowing fluent Hebrew and being able to interpret biblical Hebrew?
Right, and I think that's been the thing that's excited me the most. What I've really been shocked by, though I went to seminary, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, studied Hebrew, Greek, all of the things you're supposed to do with theology, most of that was a study in preparation to be a pastor. And I think the difference between that and really taking the scripture as a serious book that we're to understand, it's very difficult to understand it in just English. So one of the things I've done over the last 10 years is I've had a chance to spend time with Nehemiah Gordon, who happens to be a Hebrew scholar. He and I had a process of study over years, where now I can open up my Hebrew Bible and understand what it says without the filters of the English translators, who unfortunately sometimes have an agenda. So that's what I've done. I appreciate those that are interested in that. But now, Paul, we have some tools that are out there where people can actually interact with the languages without necessarily going through the same process I did. So I always encourage people to use the tools that we have to try to get behind the English translation to what I call the biblical truth in its language, history, and context.
How much is actually missing when somebody's reading the traditional translations out there today in terms of the context of the messages?
It's interesting. It's not only what's missing, but what's added. There are so many different things that there are agendas that have taken place as a result of English translators. We know that over and over again. We see it over and over again. And I mean, I have to give them credit. They gave us an ability to interact with the most important book in the world in a language that we understand. But there are just some concepts in Hebrew that do not translate well in English. There are some words in Hebrew that do not translate well in English. And so what we have been able to do as a result of having access to the Leningrad Codex, the Aleppo Codex, the Cairo Codex of the Prophets, is to actually interact with what the scribes wrote and then be able to give translation without the agenda of tradition.
Do you have any struggles starting to keep Torah from when you started to learn these things to the lifestyle you were brought up in?
It's interesting for me. 10 years ago when I was in Israel and I had these interactions, these three main things that I think it's really interesting. Whenever nations have come into Israel, they'll try to take them over. There are three things they'll ban. They'll ban God's time, God's Torah, and God's name. And yet these same three things are things that we find in Isaiah for the foreigner to come and to understand Torah, to grab a hold of his covenant, and to love his name. So these things have been the things that I've been in the process with. Do I think I have it all figured out? Absolutely not. But I am in the process of learning the information and then applying the information into my life, so that when I walk as a person in this pagan, what I call foreign land, I probably look a little different, think a little different, talk a little different, walk a little different, act a little different. But hopefully I'm doing that according to the Tanakh as it was understood for the ancient Israelites.
Well, there's a very popular football player, Reggie White, who had started to learn about the biblical way to do things, or the Hebrew roots, and you had a hand in doing that because you introduced him to Michael Rood.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about what you're doing with the Football Association?
Well, actually, I think it's a good thing for me. In about 2007, I actually put that down. I had a great ministry to professional athletes in NFL and the NBA. I've been able to put that down. I put CAUSE, which was called Christian Athletes United for Spiritual Empowerment, on pause. And as a result of putting it on pause, I've spent a lot of time interacting with Scripture, understanding what it means. Reggie and I were very good friends. I actually did his funeral for him. It was a really sad time that we lost him. But Reggie was a wonderful man that was trying to find his root. He was trying to understand what the words of God meant for him today. And he was doing that both in the New Testament and the Old Testament, as they say, the Tanakh. And I appreciated his zeal, because he took the zeal that he had on the football field, he applied it to study. So I actually introduced him to Nehemiah Gordon. Michael actually knew Reggie before that. So that's where I've been able to help. Well, I was able to help him, and he tried to emulate the study process that I went through, and it was doing extremely well until he died.
And the interesting example was, here he was, a popular Christian fellow playing a professional sport, but then when he started to accept the Hebrew roots or look more into it, people started to call him crazy.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, it's really interesting, at his funeral, unfortunately, as I stood up to speak on his behalf, many people that were some of his biggest detractors, some of his biggest enemies, actually came to the funeral. And after the funeral, they said, oh, now we understand. Well, unfortunately, they didn't get a chance to say that to Reggie. I think that Reggie was in the forefront of what's happening around the world. People are awakening to their root of their faith. They're understanding it. They're wanting to get back to the Scriptures. They're trying to get back to what God intended through His Word. And I think we should all be encouraged. So that's why I'm excited about what you do, Paul, what everybody's trying to do in terms of giving people access to information, inspiration, and revelation. And that's what I'm doing at my site, hishollywoodname.com. Other places, the books, the TVDs, all that stuff is an attempt to give people a chance to interact with some information that can help them.
Keith, tell everybody your website, how they can contact you one more time.
Absolutely. Actually, you can actually contact me on the website, hishollywoodname.com, and especially those that are interested in becoming ambassadors. I call those the people that we want to give the information to, help them to be great witnesses around the world. There are people around the world that are proclaiming God's name, understanding His time and His Torah. So it's hishollywoodname.com. torah.com. You can go to the embassy section where you can actually sign up for the newsletter and stay updated with everything that we're doing, especially in 2012, because we're starting an international initiative. We're going to be reaching out to people around the world with this information that changed my life, and I believe it will change their life, and certainly it will probably change your life too.
Thank you for being a guest here on Torah Life Ministries. Anything else you'd like to add?
I appreciate the offer and the opportunity. I hope all of you are blessed in the mighty name of the one who has come and who has given us access to everything that we need to be his witnesses on the earth.
Thank you very much. Shalom, shalom.
Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.